Shalom. I hope that the beginning of this secular year has been a good one for you, but there is no better way to address a new period of time than by studying the scriptures. Today we're going to be looking at chapters 20 and 21 of the Besorah of Yochanan. If you haven't already read these, please stop now and read them and review where we are in the scriptures. Now we know that Yeshua's formal burial has taken place after his death. And this was a challenge to his Talmudim and all of his followers. It seemed as though everything was over. How could he be dead? But what do his followers do? Well, we have accounts both in Yochanan, in Matthew, Mark, and Luke of the next events. Miriam of Magdala, accompanied by at least 3 other women, went to the tomb where Yeshua had been laid. It was the first day of the week. That means it was any time after sundown on Shabbat. Why did they choose to visit the tomb? Well, it was still dark. Well, this is a sign of respect for someone they had cared for in this life. And they probably intended to say prayers in lieu of sitting Shiva. This was a practice already in force. We know that from the death of Eleazar. And of course, there was no relatives home to go to for this purpose. When they arrived, they saw that the stone, this massive stone set in this trough, had been moved. It no longer covered the mouth of the tomb. And when they looked, they saw that the body of Yeshua was no longer in the tomb. They assumed that either the Romans or the religious leaders had removed the body so that the site couldn't be used by Yeshua's Talmudim to encourage them or to support them in some way. Miriam alone had the presence of mind to go, after seeing this, and tell Shimon and Yochanan, the 2 Talmudim closest to Yeshua, to tell them what she'd discovered. She didn't say that Yeshua had risen from the dead because she had no thoughts of such a resurrection. She said simply, "They've taken the Lord away and hidden his body." Shimon and Yochanan immediately ran to the tomb, and Yochanan, being younger, outran Shimon. Yochanan bent down and looked in. And what he saw was astonishing. He saw the linen cloths lying in the place where Yeshua's body had been. But Shimon did not stop at the mouth of the tomb. He immediately went into the tomb. And he saw, although the Greek word here used means to contemplate. He contemplated the linen wrappings, including the one that had been around Yeshua's head, which was now folded neatly, and the linen for the body separate from the cloth for the head. Not as if it would have been if a grave robber had taken the body, or if it had been done surreptitiously and quickly. Then Yochanan too went into the tomb, but we read his words that he saw and believed. Although they had not yet come to understand that the Tanakh teaches that Mashiach has to rise from the dead. They didn't understand this, but he believed. Having drawn whatever conclusions they might from the empty tomb, Shimon and Yochanan returned to wherever they were staying. Miriam, however, did not view the sight and return home to await further developments. She stayed at the site where Yeshua had been most recently. She was grief-stricken. She was weeping. And she was wondering what had happened. Standing outside the tomb, she looked into the tomb. And she was surprised because now there were two angelic beings in white sitting where Yeshua's body had been. One was sitting where his head had rested, and the other where his feet would have been. Well, clearly they hadn't been there before. These messengers from Hashem spoke to her, and they asked her why she was weeping. It's interesting that their appearance didn't seem to startle her or cause her to be afraid. She simply answered their question using the nearly same words as those addressed to Shimon and Yochanan. They took my Lord, and I don't know where they've put him. Immediately after speaking these words, she turned around to discover a man who she did not recognize as Yeshua. Yeshua asked her the same question. Why are you weeping? And then he asked, who are you seeking? She thought he was the gardener, possibly the one responsible for Yeshua's body being removed. Certainly someone who might know what had happened. Respectfully, she asks that he tell her where the body has been taken so that she can take the body to somewhere more appropriate. Certainly, she couldn't have moved the body herself, but she wanted to see that what was done was correct. As soon as Yeshua speaks her name, she knows him. And she calls him Rabbi. And so, the first person to whom the risen Yeshua appears is a woman. Courts of law in that day, and until the 20th century in most places, did not accept the testimony of a woman. But Yeshua makes Miriam the first witness in spite of that. Miriam's immediate response was to take hold of Yeshua, perhaps fearing that he would disappear as quickly as he has appeared. But Yeshua tells her not to cling to him, not because her touch would defile him, but simply to admonish her to go and tell his Talmudim that he would see them again. All kinds of things have been made of this do not touch me. Of course, we're reading English, which has been translated from Greek, which has been translated from another language, Hebrew. Through all those translations, you tend to lose things. But the fact is that this has nothing to do with defiling him or any other weird idea that people have. He wants to send her on her way with a specific message. He says, "Go to my brothers and tell them, I am going back to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." What an interesting way of putting it. Not our Father and our God. He's just said that they're my brothers. But note the distinction between his relationship with God and that of his Talmudim. He says my brothers because he's indicating a family relationship. Yeshua's first appearance to his Talmudim occurred that same day. The Talmudim were gathered together with the doors shut. Perhaps they were seeking safety from the religious leaders who might be looking for them. Also, they needed time together to consider the future. Was there a future without Yeshua? And the space in which to contemplate the news of the risen Yeshua. What did it mean? Yeshua appeared among them. There were at least 10 of them, according to Luke. Yeshua's resurrected body was not limited by walls or doors. That we could see. Yet it was certainly physical enough for Miriam to touch him. And his first words to them were, Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem. The most ordinary of greetings, yet conveying to them a blessing in place of what they might have expected, rebuke for abandoning him. It's as if he'd never left. Shalom Aleichem, peace be unto you. Yeshua assures them of who he is, that he is truly risen from the dead. He shows them the marks on his hands and in his side. He indicates complete commitment to them and his knowledge of their commitment to him in spite of the recent events. How does he do this? He commissions them. He says, just as the Father sent me, I myself am sending you. And so we have an answer to their question, the future. What will the future be? They will continue his work. And then even more amazingly, Yeshua breathed on them and said to them, receive the Ruach HaKodesh. This act would bring them new life, removing their doubt, their discouragement, and their fear, as he had said previously. Just as Hashem breathed life into the first human being, so Yeshua, God with us, breathed new, abundant life into his Talmudim. People often ignore this and believe that the Acts 2 events are the first time the Ruach has appeared. But it isn't. They have already been breathed upon by Yeshua and received the Ruach. Yeshua also gave his Talmidim authority. Authority to offer assurance from Hashem and to take up a divinely appointed mission to warn of the danger in rejecting God's mercy. Finally, to proclaim forgiveness to the repentant. Tomah, his name means the twin, was not with the other Talmidim when Yeshua appeared to them. When he was told that Yeshua had appeared, he stated that he could not believe in Yeshua's resurrection unless he saw proof with his own eyes. This is a man who stubbornly refused to accept the word of men he had lived with for 3 years, trusted eyewitnesses. Well, 8 days later, the Talmidim were again together with the doors shut, and this time Tomah was with them. Yeshua again appeared among them and said, Shalom Aleichem. Immediately turning to Tomah, he told Tomah to examine his hands and his side, explicitly repeating Tomah's previous demands. Yeshua deeply desires that Tomah fully believe. And Tomah responded, My Lord and my God. Tomah explicitly proclaims his faith in Yeshua's divine nature. And Yeshua accepts these titles as rightfully belonging to him. Tomah's statement of faith is a wonderful example. He refuses to say he believes when he doesn't. But when he sees the evidence, it demands a verdict. Yeshua has conquered not only death, but unbelief. Yeshua blesses him for believing, but declares that those who would come to believe in the future, without having the opportunity Tomah had, are promised an even greater blessing. Yeshua appeared 5 times on the day of his resurrection, or soon after. He appeared to Miriam near the tomb, to other women in the garden, to 10 of his Talmidim in a closed room, to 2 walking along the road to Emmaus, and to his Talmidim in a closed room with Tomah present. The final verses of Yochanan 20 offer a summary of this Besorah. Yochanan tells us that Yeshua's activities are not limited to those he has described for us, but those he describes are for a specific purpose. So these writings are not an attempt to provide every bit of information that might sway the reader. Rather, Yochanan's account is the narrative of a life offering those who read or hear an introduction to Yeshua HaMashiach. To those who come to know him personally, more will be revealed. And now finally we look at chapter 21. Yochanan records several appearances of Yeshua to his Talmidim in this chapter. The first experience was in the Galil near Tiberias. And of course, Matthedyahu 28 records another appearance of Yeshua to Talmidim in this area. Pardon me. Shimon and 7 other Talmidim, including Yochanan, went fishing. They were fishermen, but they caught nothing. Well, fishermen expect to be disappointed from time to time, although not often, because my grandfather was a great fisherman, and he usually came back with something. Shimon and 7 other Talmudim, including Yochanan, are fishing. They're fishing, and they expect to find fish, and they need to find fish because they need to feed themselves. Shimon was practical. Even Talmudim of Yeshua needed to eat and provide for their families. Previously, it would seem that Yeshua and his 12 had been provided for through individual charity, Luke 8:3. But this was not likely to be still in place after Yeshua's execution. Yeshua had told them that they should return to the Galil, to their home. At this point, the Talmudim had no assured purpose and were unclear how they should proceed. Unexpectedly, when morning came and it was light, Yeshua appeared on the shore. They were in their boat, having caught nothing. They didn't recognize him at first. Something was different about him. Clearly, Miriam hadn't recognized him either. He addresses them in a way similar to our colloquial boys, a common way to greet working men. He asks them if they have fish available to sell, and they must explain about their unsuccessful night of fishing because their answer is no. Yeshua is not a fisherman. He has no experience fishing. But he suggests that if they cast their nets on the right side of the boat, they will be successful. There's no logical reason why this should be the case. Instead, this is a test of their willingness to find God's guidance in unsuspected ways. And what did they have to lose? Since they did not know this was Yeshua, it was not a test of faith as such. But when they did as he suggested, they were unable to pull in the nets because of the abundance of fish in them. This fish story is prophetic of their activities as shaliachim, where their success will result from following God's leading. Only then, when the fish had been brought in, did they recognize Yeshua. Yochanan says, "It is Adonai. It is the Lord." Shimon immediately put on his outer garment. He would not want to appear before his rabbi in a state of undress, and plunged into the sea to reach Yeshua more quickly. The boat, it seems, couldn't move quickly enough for him. The other Talmudim followed, dragging a very full net of fish with them. As soon as they landed, they saw that Yeshua had prepared a fire with fish laid in it, along with bread for their breakfast. Yes, Yeshua had prepared food for them. And he now invites them to add some fish from the catch they've just brought in. Confirming that this is an eyewitness account, we are told the precise number of fish caught, 153. Fishermen will always remember this. Shimon himself dragged the net to shore. With that many fish and a wet net, probably around 300 pounds, demonstrating his physical strength. Yeshua, rather than expecting his Talmidim to prepare breakfast for him, served them. In the past, they would have thought of asking who he was, but there's something different about him. And yet they know that it's Yeshua. Pictured here is the fellowship of the Talmidim with Yeshua. Yeshua took the bread, and although it does not say this specifically, we know that he would have given thanks with the hamotzi that we still use today. Then he took the fish, offering again a blessing, and gave it to them. As they ate the bread and the fish, they were reminded that he cared for all their needs. And it's a reminder to us as well. Following this breakfast, Yeshua addressed himself to Shimon bar Yonah. Apparently, he'd already met personally with Shimon the day of the resurrection, but they still have some unfinished business to talk about. The use of Shimon's full name suggests that this is important business. Is Yeshua asking him to compare his love for Yeshua with that of the other Talmidim, those who had not betrayed him? Or is he referring to his former way of life as a fisherman? In either case, Yeshua already knows Shimon's heart. He's asking Shimon to examine himself. Yeshua asks the question several times, translated using the Greek agape, which means giving, unselfish love. Shimon answers, translating using the Greek word that's translated from the Greek phileo, meaning a friendly affection, like I'm your friend. This is a reserved response. After Yeshua had asked twice and Shimon had answered twice, Yeshua gave Shimon a personal commission. He said, "Feed my lambs, tend my sheep." For the third time, Yeshua asked Shimon, "Do you love me?" This time, the word used is translated with the Greek phileo, adopting the word Shimon had used. A reminder that Shimon had 3 times betrayed Yeshua. Shimon was grieved because he understood the significance of the change in words and the triple question. Yeshua did not ask Shimon for an apology or request that he never do it again, because he knew Shimon's heart. Shimon answers, "You know all things. You know that I love you." Again, the Greek phileo is used. He knew Yeshua knew him better than he knew himself. And he offers no grandiose boast of absolute love as he might have in the past. Yeshua again responds, "Feed my sheep." With these words, he commissions Shimon to take the Besorah to his own people, to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. The first message announcing Mashiach's Besorah was given by Shimon on Shavuot to a crowd of Jews and proselytes assembled for that holy day. And at the beginning of his first letter, Shimon writes, "To God's chosen people living as aliens in the diaspora, in Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, the province of Asia, and Bithynia, chosen according to the foreknowledge of God the Father, and set apart by the Ruach." Shimon, with Yaakov, was the leader of the Jerusalem Kehillah. Yeshua spoke with great assurance to Shimon, although telling him something of the nature of his death to come, which would be similar to that of Yeshua. Shimon would face challenges, but he would be totally faithful. It is believed that approximately 34 years later, Shimon was executed on the stake with his head downwards, saying he did not consider himself worthy to die in the same position as Yeshua. This is recorded by Eusebius, Prudentius, Chrysostom, and Augustine. Jerome says that he was martyred under the Emperor Nero. Yeshua's final words to Shimon, who was among the first to be called to follow him: keep on following. Whatever the future would bring, Yeshua encouraged Shimon to be steadfast, unmovable, and unshakable. What about Yochanan? The rumor went around that Yeshua had said that Yochanan would not die before he returned. Is Shimon really concerned about Yochanan and what he will be doing? Yeshua asked Shimon what possible difference Yochanan's future can make to him, as it will be as unique as Shimon's is unique. Having just renewed his challenge to Shimon and having given him a commission, why was Shimon's response to deflect attention to another? We do, of course, know that Yochanan went to Ephesus, that he wrote 3 letters challenging those who were drifting in the pagan sea to take hold of Yeshua. And we are going to be looking at those 3 letters in the future. Yeshua offered Shimon a powerful and pointed challenge. You follow me. This isn't about Yochanan. You follow me. Don't worry about anyone else or what they are doing. Those are wise words to us. Don't look around at what other people are doing. Don't measure yourself against other people. Just do what God has directed you to do. Remember the discussion about who will be first in God's kingdom back in Matthew 18? We need to move on from that. This isn't about being first. This is about doing the work that God has called us to do. Finally, we read, "This is the Talmud who is testifying about these things and who has recorded them. And we know that his testimony is true. But there are also many other things Yeshua did. And if they were all to be recorded, I don't think the whole world could contain the books that would have to be written." Yochanan gives testimony to the utter truth of what he has written. Yeshua did much more than any of his biographers have recorded. but it would be impossible to recount everything he did and said. Most importantly, this is just the beginning, as the narrative of Yeshua's work in the world continues in their day and to this day, and until Mashiach Yeshua returns. May that day be soon. We're going to do a review and assessment of this book, but I'm going to leave that for next time. I wish you shalom and blessings.